Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And due to the unfortunate recent passing of Michelle Trachtenberg, I'm doing two reviews in her honor. One for a film of hers that I've never seen, and one that is just one of my personal favorites. Since I've already done the one that I haven't seen, this review is going to be for one of my personal favorites of hers. And that would be the 2004 film Eurotrip. Here is your trivia question for today. What is the song from this film that received an insane amount of popularity? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So, in Eurotrip, we meet our main character of Scott, who just recently graduated from high school. Now, unfortunately, his girlfriend Fiona chose this as the perfect day to break up with him. Now, even though Scott is feeling pretty low right now, his best friend Cooper tries to cheer him up with the idea of taking a European vacation to go visit his pen pal. You see, he's only recently discovered that his pen pal is a beautiful woman from Germany, and the two of them have had a very strong connection through their email correspondence. So Scott and Cooper fly off to England to start their European journey. Once they've made it to Paris, France, they even meet up with their two other best friends, Jamie and Jenny, who are twins. So now the four of them decide to spend the rest of the trip together as they continue to make their way to different locations throughout Europe. Along all of their different stops, they get involved in fun, crazy, and sexy situations. Now, of course, the real question becomes when/if they do find Mika, will she actually be excited that Scott came all this way for her? So the movie's original title was not Eurotrip, it was in fact Ugly Americans. Now, me personally, I do think Eurotrip was a much better title, but the biggest reason that they changed it to this is to try to ride the coattails of the movie Road Trip, which was a huge success. They even tried to talk Tom Green into making a quick cameo in the film, but he turned it down. Eurotrip actually had three directors and writers. They were Jeff Schaefer, Alec Berg, and David Mandel. Now, I know this movie wasn't a huge success, but it did end up getting some cult popularity, which it just does surprise me a bit that none of these actors, other than really Michelle Trachtenberg, really saw much success after this. There are also quite a few cameos throughout this movie, including Vinnie Jones, who plays the character of Mad Maynard. Now, in the film, his character is a huge fan of the Manchester United, but he wasn't at all in real life. In fact, at one point in his life, he played for Wimbledon in the Premier League against them. You also have Lucy Lawless as Madame von der Sex, and if you didn't put two and two together, that's correct. This is the same actress who played Xena Warrior Princess. Probably the most shocking cameo of the film is Matt Damon. In fact, he was good friends with the screenwriters of this movie, and since he was in Prague filming the movie The Brothers Grimm, he was offered a cameo in this movie. He had no issue with shaving his head, as in The Brothers Grimm he was going to be wearing a wig. You also have Fred Armisen as the creepy Italian guy, which is also one of my favorite characters in this film. Diedrich Bader as the mugger. Jeffrey Tambor as Scott's dad. Patrick Malahide as Arthur Fromer. Now, they did ask the real Arthur Fromer to appear in the film, but due to scheduling issues and the fact that he was not a big fan of the script, he declined. Joanna Lumley, who unfortunately her scene was cut from the film, but it still shows up in the end credits. Kristen Kruek as Fiona, Raid Sherbagia as Tibor, which, by the way, if you didn't notice the joke with his car, it has the same paint job and horn as the General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard. Here are some other cameos you may have missed due to costume and makeup. As the French Robot Man, you had J.P. Menot. As the American Robot Man, you had Pat Kilbane. Appearing as the Absinthe Green Fairy, you have Steve Heitner. And finally, as the old woman in the confessional who gets quite the eyeful, you have Mindy Sterling. Here are some things you may or may not have missed. In the von der Sex scene, the two assistants are called Hans and Gruber. This is the name of the villain from Die Hard, Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman. For no reason that I'm aware of, both Scott and his mother are both reading the book Sinners by Jackie Collins. There was a scene in the original script where Cooper tries to find a sex club called The Secret Room. He mistakenly ends up at Anne Frank's house, which is a museum, and he breaks his way into it and ends up in a very awkward interaction with the tour group. This scene was considered too offensive, so they ended up creating the Vondersex scene instead in its place. 95% of this movie was filmed in the Czech Republic, but there are also some sequences filmed in England, Germany, and even the Vatican City. Now, that does make me very curious as to what was actually filmed there, because all of the sequences that take place there, I can't imagine that being allowed. So, when it comes to the film Eurotrip, I actually really enjoy this one. I think it's very funny and such a great parody of what could happen on a European trip. So, I'm going to give this film a 4 out of 5. Now, if you did enjoy this movie, other films I recommend checking out are National Lampoon's European Vacation, National Lampoon's Senior Trip, Joyride, and Road Trip. Now it's time to answer the trivia question from the beginning of this episode. What is the song from this film that received an insane amount of popularity? The song I'm referring to is, of course, the one that Matt Damon's Donnie and his band are singing, which also shows up later in a European nightclub and as a cell phone ringtone, and that is Scotty Doesn't Know. This song, which in my opinion is definitely in the top 5 best in universe songs from a film, was so popular in reality that it ended up as number 75 in the Hot 100 Billboard charts. Now, Matt Damon is not actually the one singing. The band who did this song is Lustra. I also wanted to let all of you know I was almost very mean, as my trivia question was going to be, what was the safe word from the Club Vondersex? I do want you to be honest though, if any of you would have actually known this, just let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and check out the other Michelle Trachtenberg movie I did a review for, Harriet the Spy.